Welcome to Mesa Now. I'm Chris Brady.
And I'm Lily King Cisneros. You know, something looks a little bit different, Chris.
This is a little different setting for our show. We don't have the desk in front of us.
No, we're sweltering out in the heat.
Yes, we are. But we're looking forward to this. Is a unique episode where we get to go behind the scenes to some of our city employees who provide critical services.
Absolutely. So, want to go check them out?
Let's go.
Okay.
Our first stop on our behind the scenes roadshow is here in the Communications Building, a fairly nondescript building of the city, but it plays a very important role. And we are going to be visiting today with our 911 operators and dispatchers.
Yeah, and Leanne McClaws, you've been here with City for about 18 years as a 911 operator. How did you get started with this?
Well, I was a stay-at-home mom. I had 4 children. I was married to an officer that worked out of a different city. And I've always enjoyed him coming home and telling me the stories. And he always said, you would be good at this. You've got the patience and the personality that would do well at this job. So once all my kids were in school, I tested, and here I am.
So tell us what it's like. You know, we see, movies and shows that talk about 911 operators. It must be an interesting day not knowing what kind of calls you're going to get at any moment. So tell us a little bit about what it's like on a daily basis, as much as an average day, what that might mean.
We do. It depends on the shift you work. Day shift, we get a lot of your vehicle break-ins, your residential burglaries, but we can also get your more serious calls, your CPR calls we handle. And every day is like a different job because you never know what's going to come in on that phone line.
So when a call comes through and it's an emergency call or somebody needs something right away, what are the steps you do? How do you calm them down and walk through the process with them?
Well, when they first call, I'm going to have a short conversation with them and determine if an officer needs to be sent out or if we just need to transfer them to somebody else in the city or maybe just send an ATL out, attempt to locate out for them. And then if I determine an officer is going to be sent out, then I'm going to obtain the address, a brief summary of what's going on, and then I make the decision as to how I'm going to type the call, and prioritize it. And at that point, I'll enter it into the computer with the brief summary and send it over to our dispatcher, who's going to voice it out to our officers. And while the officers are responding, then I'm going to keep the caller on the phone, depending on the nature of the call. And we have an emergency checklist that we follow that's blocks of questions that assist the officers on the street in the order of the questions. And I'll keep the caller on the line and get that information and just type it into the computer for the officers to assist them. And then I'll either keep the caller on the phone and until the officer gets there, or if it's just a minor call, we can let him go and just tell us to call us back if anything changes.
Lana, you've been with the city here for 18 years, is that correct?
18 years, yes.
So talk to us a little bit about what you've seen changed from the early days that you're here to today. What's different about your job?
The call volume. It used to be when I first started, there were nights I was the only one on duty as a call taker.
Really? Wow.
Yes, and so the call volume is a big thing. Technology is big. The new consoles we've had, and the computers, more and more maps, more and more just guidelines to follow. A lot of new information we get. It's always updating.
Right.
And it's making your job easier with the new technology.
Much easier. When I first started, we had a very small screen that was orange in color. This is so nice now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your job is so important because that's where a lot of people think about, they're taught from a very early age about 911. But I've also heard that sometimes people maybe take advantage of that and use it for other purposes. How often do you get calls that are not necessarily emergency calls that could be better handled through a different phone number or means? Does that happen as much?
It happens a lot.
Does it? Okay.
Because people just think 911 when,
right.
A vehicle break-in or a house break-in, if it's delayed, they come home and just find it broken into and nobody's inside, or they wake up in their car, they'll immediately just think to call 911. But we'll just redirect them and say, we can't really tie up the 911 line. and we'll give them our non-emergency number and ask them to call.
Why don't you give it, here's an opportunity. Why don't you share with everyone what is that non-emergency
Our
number?
non-emergency number is 480-644-2211.
644-2211.
Right, and I'll answer that call, or I'll answer the 911 call.
Okay, but that really helps us to free up where we
Right.
need to have the operators and dispatchers to handle those real
Exactly.
emergencies, right?
Right.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for all your service for the city and all that you do here, and all your colleagues here as you represent them
Thank
here with
you.
us today. We appreciate kind of what we call the behind-the-scenes service that you do. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Leanne.
Thank you.
Thank you. The Forensic Services section of the Mesa Police Department opened in 2008. Since that time, they've won national awards and solved many crimes here in Mesa. With us today is Kia Kloss, a crime scene specialist. I think I said that right.
Yes.
Who's been here with the city for 12 years, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So you've kind of seen the transition from the older facilities to these new facilities.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about some of the things that a crime scene specialist does, a senior crime scene
Yes.
specialist does.
When I'm working out in the field, I spent the first 9 years of my career here working out in the field, and that's processing crime scenes using photography, processing for latent prints, collecting evidence. In the last few years, the last 3 years, I've been assigned to work in the crime lab. So I work in this crime lab,
Okay.
and my duties now are I retrieve evidence from our evidence section, and I process the evidence using different chemical processes, and I try and develop fingerprints on it. And I also screen the items in search for biological evidence.
So is there anything unique or specific that our crime lab does that other crime labs maybe throughout Arizona or the nation don't do?
There are a lot of unique things about this lab. One of the most unique things, I think, is that we have a volunteer crime scene unit here, and there aren't very many of those in the country. So we do have a volunteer crime scene unit. We also have very updated equipment in all of the different labs that we have within this facility. We constantly get training, so even our skills are very updated skills. And we have won many awards, so it's a great place to work.
So Kia, I'm sure a lot of cities have individuals who do work similar to you do. Is it having a lab of this built again 2008? How does the equipment and the lab itself help you in your work?
Having great equipment is a really big deal, and it's a great advantage that we have here. So the equipment will help you do your job faster, easier, you'll be more efficient, it'll be more accurate. And so we have great equipment here, and everybody's very fortunate to have that.
And what I hear from the police department is you've become a huge asset in helping them to solve crimes in a very timely manner because you can collect so much information and then process it on a very timely basis. Can you give us some examples of where you've been able to see the equipment in this lab help you kind of speed up that processing of evidence?
Well, almost any case that we have here, we can process all of it within this facility, so hardly anything has to be sent out. So any case that we have in Mesa can be done very efficiently through this lab.
Great. Now, with all the latest shows on about, CSI, you must be like a celebrity
I know.
in your neighborhood to know that you work in a laboratory like this. But tell us, what kind of background, if someone were interested in getting into this profession, what kind of background do you have? Would you recommend that they look into?
I think the most important thing about your background is having a very clean background. So aside from education,
Right.
I think it's about having a very clean background. I think a lot of people fail getting these jobs because
Very
of their
point.
background, and you also need to be very honest. So anytime you're interviewing for a job like this, you need to be honest because people do things wrong in their lives, and that's okay. But you need to be honest about all of the things that you've done. You need to start preparing for this job basically in high school. So as soon as you become a young adult, you need to start practicing, you need to start becoming the good person that you're going to be for the rest of your life, because if you've lived your whole life prior to working in this job and you've done shoplifting and stolen
Right.
things and had no ethics, you will
So
never
your
make
own
it.
personal
Yeah.
reputation is important to the integrity of the work that you're even doing today.
Yes.
Is that right?
So you don't necessarily need to have some sort of science background per se, but just as long as you have a clean record and you're a hard worker, you can very well work here.
Well, that's basically true. There are actually a lot of jobs within this lab itself that do require science degrees. But in general, if you would like to get in this field at all, in crime scene unit or lab tech or anything, really the main thing is to have a very clean background.
Very good.
So has there been anything that's kind of unique to, over your course of 12 years here, where you've maybe solved something to where it was a cold case or some sort of other example of where it was kind of, I don't know, high profile or different from the day-to-day stuff?
There is, but I can't talk about it. But there have been many people in this lab that have worked on cold cases or worked on something. I know one person who worked on a case and developed a fingerprint on something, and it was like the fingerprint that needed to be found to identify it to a horrible serial killer. And that was a huge deal. But it's just a lot of teamwork. So everybody has small roles that they play, but altogether, it's a big deal.
Very good. Again, another employee, Kia Kloss, who works behind the scenes working to solve crimes in Mesa. Next, we're going to go to the water treatment plant and find out more about the behind the scenes work that takes place here in the great city of Mesa.
Water, when you need it, you just turn on the faucet. But there's a series of steps that happen before you actually get that water at home, right, Chris?
Yes. And here today, we're with Jason Botko. Am I saying that right?
Yes,
Who's our water operations supervisor.
that's correct.
And this is a very important job, Lily, because, we just take for granted that we can turn the water on and it's ready there for us to drink. So, Jason, how do you make sure that the water that comes to every house in the city of Mesa is drinkable?
Well, we start with the source water, which is our cap canal, which is Colorado River water. As it enters the plant, first thing we do is add a pre-oxidant, pre-disinfectant, and that starts our disinfection of the water. The next process is to add a chemical coagulant. We use alum. That turns the smaller particles in the water into larger particles, where we then go through a 3-stage flocculation, which takes those smaller particles, makes them large enough to actually start to settle out. They go through a 3-stage sedimentation process, and by the time that water is leaving our sedimentation basins, there's about 90% removal of solids. We then filter that water through our 18 filters here at the plant, and that gives it the additional polishing and removal of all the rest of the solids and the sediments. We chlorinate that water to inactivate any viruses or bacteria that might still be there. And then we fluoridate the water and we send it to our storage tanks out front on site.
Lily, I think Jason gets the award for using the biggest words
I think so,
for
too.
the behind the scenes show.
I think so.
Great. And those were small ones.
So Jason, when we drive around the valley and we see those big canals running through the valley, some of those, the CIP, the Colorado Project water, that's actually what's coming. We get a portion of that. Is that correct? That comes into this plant?
Yep,
that then
that's
is
correct.
distributed out to the citizens of Mesa?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Okay. So that water's coming from all the way from the Colorado Basin
Yeah.
and all the way here to Mesa.
Yeah, through several impoundments, and a couple are here in the state.
Right.
But yes, it does.
Okay.
So at this particular facility, you guys are continually testing it on is it a daily basis?
We are constantly monitoring with online instrumentation. We have over 44 different online analyzers that constantly monitor water quality. We're checking any regulatory parameters that we're required to maintain. Turbidity is one, chlorine residual, pH, and fluoride. We also have 24-hour staff that takes grab samples. Grab sample is what's a snapshot of water quality at that time. We do that every 2 hours, and we monitor, again, the chlorine, turbidity, pH, fluoride, and we check that against our online analyzers. And that just verifies the accuracy of the analyzers.
So how do we stack up as far as the cleanliness of water,
Oh,
purification, all that stuff in comparison to other municipalities or even the statewide?
Well, every municipality and water utility is required to maintain the same regulatory standards that we are, and we achieve that. We achieve that every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jason, as it comes into your plant, you're treating it. I mean, you're treating it and testing it almost, 24/7 to a certain degree. Is that correct?
Yes.
So as it gets distributed out, talk to us about, the volume on average, and I know it can vary from, I guess, different times of day, but on an average day, how many gallons of water are you treating here in this facility that goes out into Mesa?
On the average day, and of course it does adjust seasonally, but for instance, today we're doing about 62 million gallons of water.
Okay. So, and that's a lot of water because obviously, we're only, each home is using a fraction of that. But again, this is a critical service, kind of behind the scenes. We don't see you out and around. You're kind of here at the plant doing your work, but a critical work for the citizens of Mesa.
Yep.
So we want to thank Jason and all the employees here at the water treatment plant for their work and making it so that when we turn the water on, we can expect it's the best quality water, best tasting water for the citizens of Mesa. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
We're here in the Utilities Control Center with Scott Derricks, who's the Utilities Distribution Controller. It's a mouthful, but Scott has a lot of important responsibilities. We're again talking about those employees who have very important responsibilities are kind of behind the scenes.
So Scott, tell us a little bit about what you do here at the UCC.
Primarily, we pump the water for the whole city, and then we monitor gas, electric, and sewer, and then we take phone calls, business hours and after hours, and respond to emergencies.
So yeah, so Scott, that was a lot, but it's a very important role. So let's back up. We'll start with the water part.
Okay.
So here you are sitting in not a very big room, but a lot of monitors and screens. So how is it you can actually manage the water distribution system from this location?
We've got a bunch of reservoirs, anywhere from 500,000 gallons to 10 million gallons, or even 20 million gallons, and a bunch of pumps, and just move the water from one spot to the other.
But what's amazing is that they're all linked together, correct?
Correct.
In a manner that you can bring all that information and you can control it from this location right here.
From the SCADA screens, yeah.
Right.
We
That's
can turn
interesting.
on and turn off pumps and valves and control and flow the water from either way on the city.
And we were just at the water treatment plant over on Brown Road, and you guys actually tie into that system, right?
That's
you
right.
control that. So how does that work?
They have two 20 million gallon reservoirs that we pump from, and we order the water and control the level in those reservoirs. And then we distribute the water from those two reservoirs throughout the whole city.
And that's a daily occurrence. You have to call them up and say,
Yeah,
I need this
more
amount
than
of water.
daily. We're changing orders a couple times a day just to maintain a certain level up there, and they just make the water for us, and we pump it into different zones through valves and pumps, so we can gravity feed part of the zones from that reservoir, and then we pump up the hill because Mesa's got a pretty big hill.
So in
up
order to manage that distribution, is this a responsibility that requires someone to be here all the time, or how does that work?
there. Yeah, it's 24/7, holidays, weekends, evenings. We're
Water
here.
still needs to keep flowing through the city,
Every time you turn on your tap, there's water flowing, so
and we appreciate
we're
that.
here,
So thank
I
you.
mean, pumping water.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
important. Now, you mentioned something else too. You listed off a lot of things and we covered kind of a critical element, obviously the water and the sewer part. But you all kind of answer a lot of other calls too that might come in. Kind of
Yeah.
give us a variety of what those other calls might be that come into
Because
this
we're
area.
here after hours, we get all the emergency calls for about 40 different departments, mostly utilities and streets and parks, and we're handling the emergencies and dispatching people to handle those emergencies all night long.
So you have the phone numbers for the park rangers if you need it.
Park rangers, and we deal with a lot of people on the radios.
Okay.
So if it's not a phone, it's a radio call.
Okay. So
So-
again, go ahead.
So then when a person at home, let's say they see, water flowing out in the street, like a pipe broke or whatever, and they call you guys up, obviously it's after hours or some other
Right.
time, they actually get you directly.
Yeah. We don't have a huge message machine. if the phone rings, we're grabbing it. So, and then we'd respond and get someone out there and get the experts out in the field and determine what needs to be done.
Wow, what a great job. I mean, an important job for the city.
Absolutely. We thank you for all the things that you do here for us and keeping Mesa water running through,
Great.
all of our pipes and to our residents.
Thanks.
Thank you. Lily, that was a great show.
That was, and it was great to see all of our dedicated employees striving to make Mesa just a better place.
Really do. We want to thank all our employees who participated on the program today.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.